Hi, my name is Eben. I'm a business strategy consultant and a data specialist. Welcome to my YouTube channel. If you've been following me, I've been doing a series with the Power BI gurus. I started with Ruth Pozuelo, and today I have with me one of the creme de la creme of Power BI in the world. He is in the person of Matt Allington, Allington without an R, A-L-L. He's very peculiar about that. So Matt Allington is a business person from the business background, so we'll be talking more on business. He has over 25 years experience in the business world and currently consults for businesses for the past 7 years. He worked with Coca-Cola and rose to be the director BI in the Coca-Cola Asia Pacific. So I would leave him to probably introduce himself since he's here. Welcome, Matt.
Yeah, thank
to
you.
My channel.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ebenezer. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and to your audience. And so I know it's early where you are, so early in the morning. It's sort of early evening here, my time. So what is it? It's like coming on to 7:30 p.m. But the great time of the day, and yeah, good opportunity. Thank you very much for the invitation.
You're welcome, Matt. So, Matt, tell us about your background, yourself. At least I know that we have something in common in engineering. So,
yeah. So we were just having a chat before we started here. But so look, my background, as you mentioned, I'm a business guy, and in fact, my first job when I was just 15 years old, I worked in a supermarket. So I worked at Woolworths. Now, I'm not sure about Ghana, but Woolworths in Australia is a supermarket chain. So I'm not sure the supermarket chains you have in Ghana, but a traditional supermarket where you buy, groceries, food items, basically. Woolworths around the world is a little bit different depending on which market it's in. But
it's different in Ghana.
Sorry?
It's different in Ghana. The operation is different in Ghana.
Okay. All right. So that I'm sure that would be the same. So yeah, so I worked there after school, and I went to university. Yes, we have something in common. I started as an electronic engineer. Well, actually, that's not true. I enrolled in an electronic engineering university course would be a more correct description of that phase in my life. Yeah, so I didn't spend a long time at that particular course, but I had a couple of attempts at university, and I always had a mathematical, scientific brain, but I think I just wasn't ready, to be honest. I just wasn't ready to study and to settle down. And so I pursued a career in retail. I worked in a supermarket chain for 8 years, partly after school, partly during university, and then I spent a few years there before I settled on Coca-Cola. And the interesting thing about spending time in a business like that, I always say that one of the best things that I learned was customer service. So I have a real customer service ethic. When you're a frontline worker, so I mean, I literally push trolleys up the hill. You know what I mean by a trolley, like wheels push your groceries in it. I push trolleys up the hill. I carried people's bags to their car. I took orders for my customers and made sure that we fulfilled those orders. So when you're delivering frontline customer service, you learn about customer service. And to this day, I value that as one of the best skills that I learned in my early career. If I call it my true pre-data analytics career, my apprenticeship, if you like. I spent about 30 years learning how businesses use data before I started helping them use data. And it's very similar to you, because you told me that you were an electrical engineer and now you're doing strategy work, right? So it's very similar. In a way. If you find yourself in a job that, let's say it's entertaining, let's say it's rewarding, but let's say it's not your passion. Now, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but in my case, I did something that I was good at. I quite enjoyed it. I earned a good living. It was worth my while coming back tomorrow, but it wasn't my passion. Do you understand? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I
My
get you.
passion has always been data. And so I just did a 30-year apprenticeship learning how people could or should
Yes.
use data before I actually made that move. And the interesting thing about, and I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, but the interesting thing about, well, first of all, Excel. Anyone that loves data loves Excel
Yeah.
because it was always the go-to product. Now, if you're a traditional SQL database professional with a traditional education, maybe you're into SQL Server or one of these other databases. More recently, maybe you're into big data. I'm not really sure. But if you're a business person, or if you were a non-traditional technical
Right.
trained data person, you loved Excel because it was your
Yeah.
tool, right? It was your
And it
tool.
was free.
And well, effectively, it was free.
It,
Yeah,
it- yeah. And
yeah.
it
I
gave
mean,
you so much room to play, do
yeah,
anything, and it works.
exactly. And then you had VBA and all that sort of stuff. So that's how I learned. My apprenticeship was with Excel, and then as I progressed and started to get more challenging data problems, I discovered that Excel didn't always meet my requirements. So VLOOKUP is only so good for a certain extent, right? So when
Yeah.
when I'm trying to give me all the customers that I have no record in my database, and give me all the records in my database where I'm missing a customer. Now, yes, you can use VLOOKUP for that, but a database does a better job at that
Yes.
task. So then I discovered Access, Microsoft Access, right? So Access, you
Oh,
can load a table, you load another table, you do an inner
and
join, an outer join, and so on. And then you can write queries, and then you can replace your data, and so on and so forth. And so Access was my second love. And
wow.
then now, more recently, Power BI. So Power BI is, well, what are we saying? I think we're coming up to 6 years, and I've been doing this for 7 years. Power Pivot, Power Query have been around a little bit longer than that.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is, I reckon if Power BI had been around 20 years ago, I would never have stumbled across
Gone to
Access.
Excel.
I would never have gone
Wow.
to Access. Now, I'm not saying that Power BI is a replacement for Access, because it is absolutely not a
They're
replacement for
different.
Access. But there are some certain things that Access can do that, in fact, Power Query can do. Like
Yeah.
comparing two lists and telling me the differences, Power Query eats that for lunch.
That's true.
Yeah. So
That's very
interesting
true.
journey.
Wow. So, I mean, you just said that you started from retail as a 15-year-old right through to Coca-Cola, and then you became the director BI doing data and how
Yeah,
companies use
there
data.
was a bit of stuff in between that. It didn't quite
I
happen.
see.
It didn't quite happen like that. Yeah, so I didn't. One day I was pushing trolleys. Next running business intelligence. Yeah, there was 30 years in between that. But yeah, so I had this career at Coke, and one of the great things about working for a corporate, and it's not for everyone, but the good thing about working for a corporate company is lots of opportunity, and so there's lots of square pegs, there's lots of round pegs, there's lots of triangle pegs, and there's lots of different shaped holes to fit everyone in, right? And so
Yeah.
so I really appreciated over those years the opportunities that I had to do different things and to take my skills. Big corporates tend to value people bringing their skills horizontally through the organization because of the additional value that can be added, exactly like we were talking earlier on. And so I spent 10 years working in IT at Coca-Cola, so 5 years for the Coke company and 5 years for Amatil, who's the Coke bottler here in Australia. And it was in my last 5 years that I did a couple of roles, but the last one was the business intelligence role. And as I said, I was always a data guy, but I was also a customer service guy, right? So here I am. I'm given responsibility for managing the delivery of business intelligence to the corporation. I inherited a great team of people who had done a fantastic job. The people before me, fantastic job. So I got handed a silver platter with some nice hand-folded serviettes. So it was pretty good. And so I didn't want to undo what had been done. What I wanted to do was bring my customer service and bring my my business experience and say, well, if I was, what would I want? So if I was on the receiving end, what would I want? Yeah, and so then I thought, well, okay, well, I've got control of the options here. What could I give back? So I started to explore, what could we do? What software do we have? What could we do better? What's the end user experience? And so I started to explore, and I discovered this product called Power Pivot for Excel. I thought, what's Power Pivot for Excel? I've never heard of this product before. So this is, I want to say, this is 2013, orders of magnitude, right? 2013.
Oh, okay.
What's this Power Pivot? I've never heard of Power Pivot. I've used Excel all my life. How come I've never heard of Power Pivot? And so it was sort of in this period when I was working in deep IT, perhaps not working for the business. So I started to explore what is Power Pivot. And that's when I actually came across Rob Colley. So you probably have heard of Rob Colley, PowerPivotPro.com.
Yeah.
And Rob was one of the early innovators and adopters of that product. I mean, he was originally on the Microsoft team, but he was the passionate believer in that product. And I'm sure there were others. I'm not trying to undersell anyone else that was also, but Rob was the guy out there. He had the blog, he wrote the book. And so I bought Rob's book and I read this book, and I was blown away at how good this product was. So here I am, I'm sitting in charge of business intelligence for Asia Pacific. We've got this fantastic database built by first-class individuals who knew a lot about database design and the importance of data analytics, and it was actually built in MDX, SQL Server Analysis Services, multi-dimensional back in those days. And we had Excel sitting on the top, and then there was this thing called Power Pivot, and I thought, wow, this is amazing. How could we use this? And then I discovered we had these other products called Performance Point, Performance Point was a product that then I think Microsoft bought and turned into SharePoint Enterprise. Okay, and then this was SharePoint Enterprise was going to be the delivery framework for Power Pivot. And Power Pivot was going to be the SQL Server Analysis Services tabular front end. So you had SQL Service Analysis Services tabular, the database, Power Pivot sitting over the top of that, which is effectively the same thing if you like, but Excel pivot table sitting over the top of it, and then all encapsulated in SharePoint Enterprise. So that was the original vision from Microsoft. Wow. And then this was before James Phillips came along. Now, I'm not sure whether we can accredit everything to James or not, but certainly on his watch, he has shepherded that product through from what was a sort of a patchwork, a patchwork of products trying to piggyback them on existing products, and then they started from scratch. And you may or may not know this, but they started with Power BI. In fact, there was another product called Power View. Have you heard of this product, Power View? Still in Excel. Yeah. And if you turn it on in Excel, it's a really early version of Power BI, basically. It's the visualization. And in fact, it used Microsoft Silverlight, which is a terrible product, but it's not fair. It was end of life when they started to use it. That was the problem. So it's not fair to say it was a terrible product. It was end of life in the same way that there's a whole lot of Adobe products that are end of life and so on. So, so they bundled it up, and then they had a first release of Power BI. So release, let's call it 0.1, and that was about a year old. And then they literally scrapped it and started again. And I think they just learned a whole lot of stuff. And so the general availability of Power BI was, I believe it was actually the second version that they actually attempted, and they just learned a lot the first time and then released it the second time. And when they first released it, so now I want to say also, what did I say before? We're coming up for, did I say 6 years? So 21. So it must have been orders of magnitude July 2015 was the general availability. Now I remember when that product came out, because I was sort of 18 months into my my independent business, and I looked at this product and I said, no, this product is no good. It had so many issues, and you know, we look back at them now and think, you know, we laugh at it. But for example, if you put a table on a canvas and you had a long heading that said sales over the last 12 months, you couldn't do a text wrap on that header.
Wow.
So if the header was 30 characters long and you had true false, you know, your header was going to be 26 characters wider than the data in your cell, and you couldn't do anything about it.
It would just truncate.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't truncate. But you couldn't do a wrap, so you had to have the full width. Maybe you could truncate, I don't remember, but it certainly wouldn't do a wrap. It might have maybe truncate was right. But anyway, so look, there are things like that are just not, you cannot put that into production, except under, you know, extreme examples. But having said that, there were some people that backed that product early on. There were some people that got on early. In fact, there were companies that got on even before they restarted. Microsoft restarted and did it again. And they've been paid back because they had faith in Microsoft. And, you know, today now, if you look back now, so 6 years in, if you bet against Microsoft on this product, you're very brave. You'd want to have a compelling case to go to the board and say, I think we should put in MicroStrategy because it's, you know, XYZ, or Tableau is the best visualization tool. Now, I actually believe Tableau is the best visualization tool still today. I don't think it'll be that way forever. Today, I think it is, but I just don't think it's the right strategic product for most companies. And you would be a very brave person to bet against Microsoft in this space, given the track record that they've had. Yeah.
I think you've actually answered the question of evolution, making even myself understand how Power BI has evolved over time. Personally, I got into it in 2016. It was a fairly better product then, I guess. But like you're saying, one thing you could trust Microsoft to do with their trajectory and their track record is the fact that they are able to improve as they get into any space that they compete. And we've all seen what they've been doing with the Power BI over the past 5 years. And anybody can attest to it's their strategy going into business analytics, that they have the right strategy. I mean, any data person cannot bet against them in these circumstances, because like we're seeing with what they are doing with this ERP tool that they are bringing, the Microsoft their ERPs,
Dynamics
365. Yes, it's the same process they are taking it through to compete with SAP in the future. So clearly you see that Microsoft has a good strategy in there to make data everywhere available to anybody and be used by anybody at all. And clearly they are getting that vision achieved. So
I think so too. And you're a strategy guy, so you appreciate this stuff probably better than most. But I think it's also worth calling out that Microsoft hasn't always done a great job at this stuff. So they've been through phases like any normal company, right? So you have your glory days and then you have your average days, right? Now, there was a period before Satya Nadella came in charge where Microsoft appeared to be pursuing a strategy of monopoly and command and control, You know, if you go back way back, remember the browser days where where their strategy for the internet was to tightly integrate Internet Explorer into their operating system so that you couldn't have an alternate browser. Now, you know, that is it is a strategy. I think we would argue it's not a good strategy. I think they got in trouble for it. Yeah.
With hindsight.
I mean, it cost Netscape its future, right? So Netscape basically got put out of business. But I mean, if you look at Satya Nadella and the team that he's brought in and the difference in the thinking. So you would never have seen open source databases being readily connected to products like PowerBi as just a standard offering. You know, it's one of the first things they did was build a set of connectors so that you can connect to MySQL or whatever, or you can install different versions of software on Linux and these types of things. I mean, once your strategy is I'm going to be the best, and we accept that there's competitors out there, but they're not going to hold a torch to us because we're going to be the best, then, you know, you just get the power of the organization behind you, or behind, you know, Satya and Nadella in this case. And, you know, they've got some smart people, and of course they've got some money as well. That helps. So they've got some money. They can afford to buy good people. They can afford to attract and retain good people. And it's the good people that are building this stuff. And so, yeah, it's pretty exciting times.
And one good thing that I've seen with Power BI and the Microsoft team is the fact that you're using the community and the users to build along. And I think that is one great lesson businesses can take off from especially you coming from a customer point of view with your customer service experience. It's always good to put the user at the center of the entire product. That in this case is user feedback that is building the product, not necessarily what a group of people just think should be, but there's a wide community of about 1 million people who are always helping shape the idea of what Power BI should be. And I'm sure that is one of the main contributors of the evolution Power BI has gone over the years, with each update being better than previously.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, Microsoft has had this product called Ideas, so ideas.microsoft.com or ideas.powerbi.com. And I think they've lost their way a little bit with that. They had a software migration maybe about 12 months ago, and it hasn't quite been the same since then. And I think if you ask Microsoft, they'd probably tell you the same thing. I think there was a few hiccups there, but they've always had, well, for the life of Power BI anyway, they've had this this strategy of asking the users for feedback, and based on popularity, they would build features. But also, it didn't have to be the most popular feature to get recognized. So I remember having a conversation with an employee at Microsoft at one stage who said that he had a window. He had 4 weeks before he started something new. They asked him to go and do some work on one particular part of the Power BI ecosystem, and, you know, download the code. So this is the way it works, right? So they have this check-in, check-out with code. So they download a section of the code, they work on the code, they test it, they make sure that it still works with the main body of code, and then they deploy it back. So he downloaded the code, but he went straight to the ideas.powerbi.com and just searched for everyone that had something to contribute to this particular piece of code that he was going to be working on. And he said that he picked up ideas that had 4 votes, that he thought that's a great idea. So it doesn't always have to be the most popular. So, but it's all about gathering those ideas and getting that work done. So I think there's that. I think Microsoft's been very good at that. Look, they always have big customers who are giving them feedback. So they've got a team of people that are customer facing as well, of course. So they take feedback from those customers. They've got a competitor, and, you know, I know about competition. You know, having worked in the Cola Wars, you know, with Coke and Pepsi. You know, we always used to say at Coke, we always used to say we were a much better company having a good, healthy competitor nipping at our heels, because it keeps you lean and mean and focused on doing the best job you can. And there would be nothing worse if there wasn't that sort of competitive marketplace out there, because monopolies are fat and lazy. That's the reality. So I hope Microsoft is not so successful. I mean, I hope it inspires other businesses to double their efforts and to come up with new approaches, because having one company who
option.
is the only option is it's not good for anyone.
Yeah, it's not good for customer service either. Neither is it good for anybody. Yeah, especially users, because you then don't have any other choice. And we need that spoil of choice to always push Microsoft to do the best, especially with the economies of scale in Office. If we don't have data, they are likely to be the only place for data analytics, and that's not the best for the industry.
Yeah, I agree.
So I agree with you. And I mean, as you coming from a very competitive environment with the Cold Wars and then between Coca-Cola and Pepsi, it always puts your users in perspective, in the sense that any slip would mean that the other competitor will take advantage of it. We have that currently in the transportation space with Bolt and Uber in the world. Even in Ghana currently, you see a lot of competition, and therefore at the end of the day, is the customer that benefits with the user experience. So competition is good, and we need that in the data analytics world, even moving into the future. I see Power BI, the whole platform, becoming more like the office of the future, that it will be part and parcel of the computers as they come, that business users would be so adept with it that it becomes like how we use all the other office tools today. So great thanks up to Microsoft on that. But let's delve deeper into Power BI now. And the question is, like, if you're a new user in Power BI, what are you to look out for, and like some hacks that you can get?
So it's an interesting question. If you're a new user to Power BI, so I have a couple of sayings. If you think about it, who could possibly be a new user? And I think there's three. I want to. They say that there's two types of people in the world: people that categorize people and people that don't categorize people. So I'm someone that categorizes people, right? So there's three types of people in the world. So you're either an Excel person, right? So you use Excel as your main tool, or you're a database person, so you come more from an IT, or you're neither. All right. So now some people don't get Excel. Some people do get Excel. Some people hate Excel because they're into databases. So let's just put people into these sort of three categories.
Groups.
Now, the problem with people coming from the Excel group into Power BI is that Power BI is not Excel, right? Power BI is not a spreadsheet. Power BI is a database. And I see it over and over again. And we talked before about forums, and I go on forums and help people. And I see over and over again, people have their Excel brain switched on, and they say, how do I do this VLOOKUP in Power BI? Or, I've got this, I've got this index match, or I'm trying to get this formula and I want it to work in Power BI, because they're thinking, see, an Excel is more like a blank artist canvas. It's more like a blank artist canvas with a paintbrush than it is a database.
Whatever.
You can do whatever you want, all right, to the lowest level of granularity, which for an artist, it's a pixel, it's the smallest dot they can paint. But for an Excel user, it's a cell in a spreadsheet. And if you blow that Excel spreadsheet up to 1 million rows and 1 million columns, it looks just like an artist's palette. And in fact, I think there are people that have done paintings in Excel before, right?
In Excel, yeah.
Right. So problem number one: if you come from Excel, and move to Power BI, every problem looks like an Excel spreadsheet, but it's not Excel. Now, in a similar way, people coming from a SQL background have a similar problem because, see, traditional SQL is a relational database. And a relational database has a role to play in life, a very important role to play in life. It's all about permanent storage, persistent storage. It's all about insert, delete, change transactions. It's all about referential integrity. It's all about storage efficiency. It has lots of things that a relational database was built, lots of problems that it was built to solve. But Power BI is not a relational database. And so the mistake that people coming from that traditional database world is that they look at Power BI like it's a relational database. So every problem they look at, they try and write a query. They want to write a SQL query to solve the problem.
Extract.
Exactly, but that's not how it works. Now, in many ways, the SQL folk it's not as hard for them. It's much harder for the Excel people, not as hard for them. Now, let's take the third group. The third group, they're not Excel people, they're not SQL people, so they're just people, right? So they're the rest of us. Now, but I would put this to you. When was the last time you went to a training course on how to use Amazon.com? Right? There's no training course for Amazon, right? You don't go to a training course to learn how to use the web. And so I think one of the roles that Power BI developers, people like me, Excel people who are building reports, SQL people who are building reports, is to try and build an end user experience that is intuitive and that you don't need to go to a training course. You don't need to watch a video to be able to understand how it works. And I think there's a skill that allows you to do that. I mean, you have to have, the whole UX, right? User experience is actually a skill in its own right. We could talk for a long time about user experience and graphic design and things like that. But that third group of people are never going to build the underlying data to support the Power BI report. They're only ever going to consume the report that's presented.
Consume the report.
Yeah, so we'll call them consumers. And then the other two groups are sort of builders, if you like. They're authors, builders, the more power users, the key users, the people that are responsible for curating their own data and getting it into a format that the end user can just consume it without having to think about it. Yeah, so I think it depends where you're coming from on what the advice is. I mean, my best advice for the people that just consume is tell the people that produce the reports what you want. I mean, that's a fair responsibility, right? So I don't understand how this works. I want to click here. I want to be able to do this. I want to be able to do that. So I think it's no different for them. For the Excel and the SQL folk, I would recommend do some formal learning, because it's not the same. And I actually didn't do any formal learning as such for Power BI because I sort of evolved and grew with the product. I did a lot of reading. I've watched a lot of videos.
You are more of the experiential learner because normally before any product gets to that point, you would go with the experience. So you learn by experience, like
yeah, you're probably right. You're probably right. So I learned by doing, and as I said before, third person teaching, I learned by teaching, right? So with my book, I wrote a book about this stuff, and I'm in the 3rd edition now, but I teach people this product, and my book is just one way to learn. There's plenty of other resources out there. Find the resource that works best for you. And depending if you come from a SQL background, maybe the resource that works best for you might be different than if someone coming from more of a business
Excel.
background. Yeah. But I'd say
all right.
For those two groups particularly, just do some formal learning. It's not expensive.
Training.
Buy a book, cost you $20, read the book, do some training. And then you can go from there, right? Because that foundation is what's important.
Okay, so just to summarize what you just said for my listeners, Matt is a guy that actually categorizes people in the world, so he belongs to that group.
Absolutely.
So, and definitely most data people do that because of segmentation. So, uh, Matt has segmented people in the world into Power BI into three: the Excel users, the people from the database, Excel users being mainly business users of Excel, and the database people, as well as those who do not belong to any of these two groups. And the advice is, if you don't belong to any of these two groups, you are quite covered, because all you need to do is to be a consumer of this report. So you just have to navigate and find out, where do I get this, where do I do that, and you are fine and good to go. The developers and people who actually build a report for you to consume are the ones that would need some level of training, and that includes buying a book, which is the Supercharger by Matt. Is a very good book to start from. Um, it's a very good book. I personally would recommend. There are other books, there are other tutorials. You could get some webinars and other courses with some few dollars, just like any training and any skill. Knowing very well this is going to be a skill for the future, it's good that you invest in that. But one thing that Matt taught me, or probably I learned from Matt through our discussions earlier on, is that if you are learning, learn as if you're going to teach another person, and that would give you, and you're going to learn through a book or through a video. Learn as if you're going to teach a third person. In that way, it opens a new door to you. It opens a new level of understanding. You would learn to understand, not learn to just keep the knowledge. And that is one good thing that you can do in Power BI. I can testify to the fact that as consultants and trainers for Power BI, it's been one of the only ways that I've learned Power BI quickly. That anytime I'm going for training and I'm learning, I know I'm going to teach a class, so I definitely have to learn to be able to answer all questions, and I learn it in a different way. So that's one useful tip for those who want to learn Power BI. Learn as if you are going to teach another person, and there's a habit that you can take on. Thank you very much, Matt, on that. What about your take on those who have already enrolled into Power BI, are now current users, and would want to have some hacks for, let's say, the DAX? What would you tell them?
So hacks, well, look, maybe not such a hack, but I mean, if I come back to the foundation of what the DAX language is about, the DAX language, and we talked about whether I'd share my screen. Perhaps I won't. I'll just sort of try and describe it. But the DAX language is built on the concept of a star schema. All right. So the most important thing I could tell anyone that's listening to this is understand what a star schema is and aim to model your data. So when I say model, so prepare your data as a star schema. And so I use AdventureWorks throughout all of my training, right? So AdventureWorks is a retail database. It has sales transactions, right? So if you walk into a shop, it's a bicycle shop. You can buy a bicycle and a helmet and a water bottle, right? 3 transactions. Those 3 transactions are in the sales database. They're in a table of sales transactions. Now, the only information that we store in that sales table about the product is the product number. Product 654 is a black 40-inch bike, right? If you want to know anything else about the product, you must go to a different table. You have to go to the product table. So the 640 is, it's a 40-inch bike, it's black, it's got, it's got a large size wheel, it's $4,000 or whatever. So all of this additional information is stored in the products table. And this is the foundation principle of a star schema, where you have a transactional table and then
a dimensional table.
And a dimension table, exactly right. And so the DAX language is built for that data model. Now, that doesn't mean that if you don't have a star schema, you can't write DAX. That is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, if you want your DAX to be easy and efficient, then where possible, you should aim to achieve a star schema. Okay. Now I see good examples of people getting stuck, and in many ways this is ironic, because if you think the simplest data model that you could build is a flat table, right?
Yeah.
One table.
One wide table.
One wide table, date, product number, product name, product category, color, blah, 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 blah. It's got 100 rows, 100 columns. And you think about it, well, I can't build a simpler model than this, it's just one table. But I can promise you, if you have one flat table, you will get yourself into a world of pain.
Yeah.
That is not the way the DAX language was written. And I was helping a customer, I do consulting work and various other things. I was helping a customer, I don't know, it was today or yesterday, I don't remember. And we had this problem, and we had one dimension table, and the DAX was not working, and it didn't have that many, it was 6,000 rows, it was nothing. And just based on experience, I sort of thought, there's something wrong. We need to get another dimension for this other column that we're working on, even if the dimension is only the single column.
The single column, yeah.
It was just a single column. It didn't have any other columns in it, just a single column dimension. We created that dimension, all of the problems went away.
Wow.
So the DAX,
I'm sure you did that by doing a create table with
well,
values
we did. That's exactly what I did. I mean, I do recommend doing it in Power Query if you can. So okay. I prefer to prepare your data in Power Query, ETL, okay. Load it into the engine. You can do it with a new table, which is exactly how I did it, just because it was quick and easy. But you know, the lesson that I want to live, you know, I want to give, and hack, or you know, I guess wise words. That you move away from a star schema at your peril. So do it when you need to, understand the compromises that you're making, but every DAX formula gets harder the further away you get from a star schema. Best advice I can give people is to build a star schema with their data up front.
No wonder you said that the people from database kind of find it easier than the Excel group.
I think so.
Because at least they will be familiar with the star schema.
Well, they are, but
Excel,
here's the problem.
Yeah.
Here's the problem with the database crowd, is that the database crowd want to normalize or denormalize, normalize. Oh, see, I'm not a database guy. They want to normalize everything, right? So they want to have a fact table and a dimension table. Then they want the dimension table to have its own dimension table, and then that dimension table has its own dimension table. And so this process of normalizing the data is also wrong inside Power BI. So you want to try and keep a single fact table with one layer of dimension tables where possible. Now, don't get me wrong, there are definitely times when that won't work, but it should be your objective. And you certainly, if you have, and so classic AdventureWorks, you have a sales table and then a product table, and then AdventureWorks has a product subcategory table and it has a product category table. There's actually 3 product tables: product subcategory, product category. The best way to model that data for Power BI is to combine those 3 tables into one. So let the user have a single place they can go and find their product data. There is no efficiency benefit of having 3 separate tables. If you're in a SQL database, in a SQL Server relational database, there is a storage benefit of normalizing the data into 3 tables. There's a referential integrity benefit and a storage benefit, but that benefit does not exist in Power BI. Okay. And so that's the trap that the SQL folk often fall into.
I think that the basic advice here is that you would have to unlearn a lot if you are coming from any of these backgrounds. That's one of the key.
Exactly the point. That's exactly the point. Unlearn.
Yeah.
Now, it's not saying that what you've learned in the past is wrong. It's right and fit for purpose for the domain in which you came from, but you're moving into a different domain and you need to unlearn those things. The other one for Excel users is the calculated column. Right, so Excel users tend to write lots of calculated columns because it's intuitive. It looks like Excel. They know how to write the formulas, but generally speaking, it's not the right approach.
Yeah. So I think that that's what everybody using any new tool. It's just like as Power BI users, we're going to learn Python or any other tool. You would have to unlearn what you know because this is a different tool and there are rules governing it. The fact that they are all Microsoft products, and like you're saying, during trainings, you have that a lot. Excel users will be like, we used to do this in Excel, and they'll even start writing their own formulas, how they think it should have been in Excel. And you'll be like, no, this is not the way. I always cite this example of Pareto. Doing Pareto in Excel is pretty easy because your cumulative totals can easily be added on by just dragging and dropping and writing several formulas together. But in DAX, you have to now put on the DAX thinking cap, like you said, and now think as the star schema and now see your database in a different way and now write a code that would then be iterative, line after line, and go through what would be happening in your database or in your engine to know what is actually returning after your code has been written.
Exactly. And the key difference between in that Pareto example that you raise is that in Excel, a spreadsheet inherently has some order. This cell is on top of this cell, is on top of this cell. It's got a logical order. A database, even though you physically see the data in order, the data is not stored in that order. And so, you know, you have to recreate that as exactly as you said.
Wow. All right. So the whole point is always think in terms of how the database is in its original form, and now think of it in star schema, unlearn, and then you are good to go.
I think so. And don't write too many calculated columns.
All right. So let's go into the business world now. Power BI is a thing. I mean, it's the obvious choice for companies who want to actually start using data analytics in making business decisions. The main question, I mean, some companies have tried, but tried it the wrong way. The question is, how can the business world use Power BI to actually improve the bottom line, which is profit most of the time? What is the best way and practical way for businesses to go into this data analytics, especially using Power BI? So what is the best approach?
That's a huge question. So let me share a couple of thoughts with you. First of all, Power BI started off essentially as a self-service business intelligence tool. So it actually started as a tool for Excel users, even though it was built on a SQL Server backend. It's sort of still built for business users. More recently, the last 2 to 3 years, a lot of the investment that Microsoft has made has been on enterprise BI. So I talk about this continuum, the self-service BI and the enterprise BI. Now, enterprise BI has always been there, all right? So this, and I use this a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but you know, just understand the point I'm making. Enterprise BI is big, slow, expensive, important, robust, reliable, right? But those things come together. You can't have robust, reliable, typically without big, expensive, with a lot of resources to hold it up. So businesses have I wouldn't say always, but for 25 years, there's been enterprise BI, that one system that you could get the one version of the truth, right? So enterprise BI has always been there. Self-service BI has always been there too. It's called Excel, right? And so when enterprise BI, big, slow, expensive, robust, reliable, when that doesn't meet the requirement, what do the business users do? Do they say, oh, well, we can't report on this requirement this week, so we'll just let the business go to hell? No, that's not what they say. What they say is, okay, Mr. IT, you can't give me what I need. I'm going to do it myself. So they get out Excel and they extract some data from their enterprise data warehouse that cost them a lot of money, and they export it to Excel in a CSV, and they open it up in Excel, and then they start manually adding the data that they need, and they build a solution to solve their short-term problem, right? Because businesses can't throw away opportunity just because the development cycle for an enterprise BI solution is 6 months and it's $500,000. All right, we've got an opportunity next week, and I come from Coca-Cola, so I always talk about product launches, right? So we're about to launch a new product. We want to track the penetration of that product against sales reps in territory so we can see where we're getting ranging of this product. Typically, that type of reporting is going to be quite a bit of manual data collection and manual reporting intervention. Not every solution fits the enterprise model. Now, Power BI started with the self-service people in mind. It's more recently become an enterprise solution, and I would say now it's actually fit for purpose across the entire, across the entire gamut. And of course, now we have these models where you can have composite models, where you can connect. You can have your enterprise solution, your enterprise model, and then an end user can create their own local version, and they can load in their own data. I mean, this is game changing as far as the ability of trying to have one version of the truth while still supporting people to do their own self-service thing. So look, I think Power BI has gone a long way to try and bring those things together. I've been on both sides of the fence, right? So I've seen the business people criticize IT for the lack of flexibility. I've also been on the IT side and seen them criticize the business people for their lack of discipline and rigor around their reporting solutions. And the truth is, there is some merit in both of those arguments. Power BI brings the best of those things together and has the potential of making a more harmonious way forward. So how to bring a data culture? I think it's got to start at the top, right? So you know, if you want to deploy data analytics in the business, it has to start at the top. Often, I don't know what I'm going to say. Often, I've certainly seen examples where the CI, I don't know what you would call them in Ghana, but we call it the CEO, right? So the Chief Executive Officer, the most senior staffed officer in the company. Sometimes those people are really into data, and so that creates a culture within your organization. People know that if they go to see that person, they have to know their stuff. They have to know the numbers. They have to go with the facts. Come in with a fact-based conversation. There are other people maybe more strategic, and I don't mean that in a belittling way, but some people have just a good feel for the business, right? And so you don't want to come in and try and say that this is 3.7% up versus last year with a trend of plus or minus 2%. You don't want to say that to that person. So I think ultimately, the number one person in the organization actually creates the culture, the data culture, but then everyone below them, effectively, the B-level managers, they're the enablers. So they're the people that secure the budgets. They have the vision. A lot of them tend to be quite strategic. But then it's the next level down again. They're the ones that actually have to front up and do all the work, and often they actually have to present the vision to their manager, right? So you've got the top dog. Then you've got like the executive level, yep, and then underneath that you've got the prime people that do all the work, right? And so they're the ones, they have to bring these solutions forward to their managers. Everyone has to help their manager be successul. This is my view.
That's the whole point.
Yeah, if you help your manager be successful, I mean, there's obviously some managers that don't deserve that, but I believe most people are worthy of that. And if you help your manager be successful by bringing forward good ideas, then I think you'll be on the path to success. And I often talk to people who discover Power BI. Often it's people in the weeds in the organization. These people who are responsible for doing the work, they discover Power BI and they get very frustrated because they're not able to influence the organization to take it on. And the one piece of advice I always give them is don't worry about it. Invest in yourself, learn the tool, use it to make good decisions for yourself on a day-to-day basis. And then when someone asks you, why did you do that? Just say, well, here's the report. This is the trend line. This is why I made this decision. Sooner or later, someone's going to go, wow, how did you do that? Show me that. Can you show me that for my department? And, so it's a bit like, ignore the butterfly. It'll come and sit on your shoulder. I'm sure that was a terrible, analogy, but I think it's, just don't worry about it. Don't get frustrated if you're not able to sell other people on your vision. Just invest in yourself. This product, this tool has an explosive growth. So invest in yourself, learn it, be really good, help other people grow. Be good at your job using the tool. It's, most organizations, you can download it. If you can't use Power BI in Power BI Desktop because you can't download it, at least you can use Power Query in Excel and Power Pivot in Excel. So most organizations would be able to do that. Learn those tools and be really good at it. And then make good decisions and be successful as a result of using those tools. And sooner or later, someone's going to notice.
I think that this advice is pretty spot on, that if you have the data culture in your organization, it will be easy to sell the Power BI tool to executives. But if you don't have the data culture, do it in your own small way. And like you're saying, it has its own inherent power to explode when it catches on. I have a personal example that, like you said, I told you earlier, it took 3 years or 4 years learning on my own, improving my own skills. And now it's catching on in the organization because, like you said, you do it, you are successful at it, you're making some right decisions, you're giving some insights that nobody in the organization knows. And they ask, how did you get about that? You just tell them, just present it in, and that's the magic. Once you do the interactive dashboarding and making some cool presentations with the data, people are like, this is it. So
yeah, exactly.
You learn on your own, you build upon it for your own growth. And it's just about starting. So you are not too late. Just keep building it till it becomes a part of the organization.
Exactly. So now the good news is this is one of those, you have to do the work anyway, right? So if you're a data person, you've got to do the work anyway, do the analysis. But these products are so efficient. You have to invest a little bit ahead of the curve with Power Query, with the transformations. But once you do it once and properly, next month you just hit the refresh button, right? And so now you've saved 4 hours in the second month, and then you save 4 hours in the third month, and then you can reinvest that time in understanding the data a little bit better. So you have to do the work anyway if you want to be good at data. You may as well use one of these tools, which makes you more efficient. The other thing that I'd like to add is that there is nothing harder to sell against than an old BI system that has a big sunk cost. So if you've got a BI system in your organization and they've spent $5 million on it and it's only 18 months old and it's got 3.5 years left of depreciation on it, that is the hardest product to sell against, because if it's not doing the job for you, the organization is going to say, you should be using this tool. We spent $5 million on it. This is the tool that you should be using. That is the hardest thing to sell against. And I pity the person that has to sell against that.
Had you told me this advice 3-4 years ago, I would have learned earlier. It was a similar case in my organization. There was already a sunk cost in a BI solution, so it was pretty hard to sell. But at least over time, as it elapsed, the contract elapsed, it was easy to people to be open to new solutions, which was cheaper.
Either that, or you need a change of management so that they can blame the last manager and write it off with the change of management. That's the other way to get rid of it. I've seen it all before.
All right. So one other thing on that again, what do you think on the selling? What do you think is the selling point to business executives with Power BI? Practical examples, what they stand to gain. with a business using.
What would I tell an executive as to why we should use Power BI?
Yes.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
you're
It's a very hard question. I mean, I've met lots of B grade executive level people, A grade executive level people, in fact, and so to me, these people they just want the facts. In most of the people that I've dealt with, they just show me, tell me what it's all about. Let's get on with it. Let's make a decision. So data to me is one of those tools that can do that. So notwithstanding that there are these strategic people that I mentioned before, but most of the people that are in these senior roles, they want to see some sort of fact. And so to be able to, if you take Power BI, if I'm responsible for sales and I build a Power BI model and I go into an executive meeting and the question is, let me talk about product ABC and how sales are going. As soon as that meeting goes off track and they say, what about product XYZ? And you go, hang on, click, click, click. Here, is this what you mean? Oh, okay. Did you prepare that before? No, I just got it here. I just got it. So I think executives are no different to anyone else. I think you just have to build the tools, believe that it's the right thing to do, and then start to use it in a day-to-day basis. Now, you got to believe that those executives had someone in the office before them saying, tell me about this product, EFG, and they showed them on a PowerPoint deck, right? And they said, oh, can you tell me about the pink version? They go, oh no, I have to go back and prepare that.
And come back.
Yeah, I'll come back to you next week. So, these people don't live in a bubble. They're just like us. They have a working agenda. They know how they do things. They know what they're used to. And these tools can make a difference. And so when you go in with the big difference between Power BI and Excel or PowerPoint is that Power BI is a model-based tool. Now, this is really important because you're building a capability. You're not building a report, you're building a capability, right? So when you build a sales report, you're not building a bar chart and a pie chart with a slicer. That's old school. When you build a sales report with Power BI, you're building the capability to regurgitate data about sales almost on demand. Now, those three groups of people that we talked about before, well, the people that just consume, okay, well, they can only click on the chart that they've been given. But the other two groups in that same meeting, they can go bam, 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 pump out a brand new chart that gives them a trend of this particular product based on demographics, based on whatever other data that you've got in your model, whatever you want. And because these people are typically either business people or IT people with a business understanding that build these models, when they build these models, they think about how they might get used in the future. So I'll often get asked to say, can you give me, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 features? And I say, yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah, 5 and 6, no, you don't need that. But you need 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, right? Now, they never asked me for 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, but I understand enough about the business to know that they're going to come and ask me for that later on. And it's no extra effort to put it in because we're building a model-based tool. If you're building a static report, it's a lot of extra effort to put in 5 new features because every feature has a linear increase on the effect of the report. But when you build a model-based tool, adding 5 new columns into your dimension table to allow you to slice and dice that down the track is basically nothing. It's no effort. And if you have the wherewithal and the foresight to do that during the planning process, then when you're having those conversations with the executives and you're trying to sell, you all of a sudden have this flexibility. So I think, they say, what do they say? You sell the sizzle, not the steak.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So you want the front end, the consumption experience is the wow factor. And particularly the more senior you get, the more wow it becomes. underneath, when you get into line managers and executional staff, they're probably going to be just as interested in the efficiency, right? So it takes me 5 hours per week to do this cut and paste process, and now I can do it in 10 minutes. You know, that you're going to excite, but what excites the people that do it is not necessarily going to hook the more senior people in the organization. Yeah, so
I always give this advice during my training. It's that one key skill that any data analyst or any data person can have, especially in the organizational or the corporate world, is the business understanding. Because without that, you build reports to your fancy, not to the benefit of the organization or the end user. And it's also important for you to know who your end consumer would be, so that you know what decisions are likely to be taken with your report. So even though they might not ask for that in your report, in your chats with them, and one thing you should also have in mind, I always tell my trainees, is that the business user normally do not know what they want, but they know the decisions they want to make. So you have to put yourself, it's like customer service. Put yourself in the shoes. What would I do if I was the CEO of this company? Or what would I do if I was the head of analytics? Or what would I do if I was the head of sales, if I'm to build a sales report for the sales director?
Yeah.
So it's the same way that you need to understand the business, understand your data. Most important, understand who the end user is. And for customer service sake, find out what is the end user going to use the product or the report for.
Yeah, and I would totally agree, and I'd like to add to that, because sometimes you do understand the business, but sometimes you don't, and particularly if you're a consultant. So in my world, I don't know every business that I consult with. So at the moment, I'm doing some consulting work for a life-saving organization, right? So I don't know anything about I've watched Bondi Rescue on TV, but I don't know anything about life-saving. What are the preventative actions that you take? What are the recovery techniques that you use? How do we record that data? How important is the number of people on a beach during a day? I'm learning all this stuff. Now, the thing is that there will be times when you don't know why. And the most important question that you can ask your customer is why. Why do you want that? Because often they'll tell you what they think they need. And I'm just sort of backing up what you said already, Ebenezer, right? So, often they'll tell you what they think they need. And the best question you can say is, why do you need that? And they say, well, because I need to produce this report. And I say, well, why do you need it like this? Well, because I've got to be able to do this and this and this and this. Okay, so what are you going to do when you do that? Oh, well, I'm going to do this. Okay, so what you actually need is you want this information. Oh, yeah, if you give me that, then I won't have to do these other 4 things. And so that question, that why question, or we say the 5 whys, ask, if you've got to ask why 5 times. That can really help drill in. And look, it's a skill as well, because you don't want to annoy your customer. All right, you're not trying to belittle them by asking these questions. It's a real skill to explain that you're trying to help them, but the only way you can help them is to understand the problem as opposed to what their perception of the solution is. And often when a customer engages with you as a developer or a report builder or a report modeler, is they tell you what they think they want instead of telling you what the problem is.
Wow. I think that settles it, that the end user mostly will tell you what they think that they want, but not what the problem is. And that is why your ability to question, your ability to ask the 5 whys, which is one thing that you have to do a lot as a developer or as a consultant, especially
they're
when
both
you do
the
not.
Same. I would argue they're the same. A developer and a consultant. Now, a developer often will have like maybe a business analyst or a technical analyst that will be doing the customer-facing work. I mean, sometimes a developer gets a specification delivered to them, but somebody has to face the customer. And good advice to that person is to understand their problem as opposed to accurately writing down what they think they need, because you're not helping them.
But at the end of the day, you are more of providing solutions. So you need to understand the problem, which is the first part of any solution provider has to do. So you need to do a lot of questioning, but your caveat was that be careful because you're doing customer service, not to annoy the customer at the end of the day.
Exactly, and it's
too
hard.
many.
And you know, and in your, well, I can only speak for myself, but in my haste sometimes to excite the customer and to get the right answer and to make them happy, you know, sometimes I don't always give them the time that I should do, and you know, it's a lifelong you know, challenge for me, and it's something that everyone needs to do, is to, you know, what do they say, we've got 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we should be doing twice as much listening as talking.
Okay, so it's been a very detailed interview so far. I think my viewers have learned a lot from Matt. Matt has a book, Supercharger. Go to Amazon, go to all the websites, you get them and buy them. It's very,
this is it here. So watch out for the black one. So the black, so this is. So I just actually happen to have them here. The yellow one's the old one. The black one's the new one. So so get the black one if you want to buy my book. It's. I've learned a lot. We talked about teaching, right? I've learned a lot about teaching over the years, and I'm surprised. I rewrote almost every chapter with what I've learnt about teaching this subject. The subject, what I teach hasn't changed. The way I teach it has changed over the years.
So thank you very much, Matt. You've been you've enlightened me and my audience. Clearly, with your engineering background, you're a person of always going to first principles of understanding the scenario. Like you say, even in your teaching, you are looking at why you teach and getting the right things to your students. So it's one life hack.
I appreciate it. It's great. Thank you for reaching out to me. It's been great to talk to you. It's been a lot of fun. So thanks a lot.
Thanks so much. All right. So viewers, that's Matt Allington, over 30 years in business business solutions, worked in business, retail, grew in business, and now providing solutions for business. So thank you for watching and subscribe to the channel. All right, Matt.